Alright, so for you guys who follow my channel, then you will know that a few days ago I uploaded a video where I said I had gained 8 kgs in just 8 weeks. And in that video at the end I said I was gonna start cutting weight and go on a fast. And it has not happened after 4 days. Alright, I kept on finding excuses to just keep eating more processed foods, potato chips and chocolates. Because psychologically I was addicted, and I'm not making up this addiction just for the sake of this video. Honestly, I felt the difficulty in stopping, and that was just from snacking on processed foods. All right, so I was eating 3 healthy meals and just eating 1,000 calories of processed foods a day on top of that, which seems a lot, but I was exercising a ton on top of that. And the reason why people find it so hard to lose weight is because of the food in the food industry these days. Literally, if it was like gambling, then the odds are against you in terms of losing weight because the games are stacked against you. Now, if, say, Coffee here, my dog, is overweight, it's simple for me to get him to lose weight. I just don't give him food or less food, and he will naturally lose weight. For our great-grandparents who had lived through World War II, nobody was fat because they just didn't have access to the food. It was literally forced upon them. Okay, they had to go. They had to have rations, or people in some countries that were really war-torn, they were just really unlucky, and they were facing starvation. All right, so when forced upon us, we will just naturally not gain weight. But people who gain weight is not because they are lacking willpower or anything. They're just enjoying life, and then one day they decide they want to lose weight, and they find it very difficult to lose weight. Why? There's several mechanisms here, right? First of all, they put a lot of sugar in foods, so you get a dopamine hit. They deliberately do that, right? They literally have teams in food companies that are trying to design the foods to be as tasty and addictive as possible to basically outcompete their competitors, right? So the sugar will give you a dopamine hit, which is the same stuff that you get in your brain when you take drugs or smoke or drink or have sex or anything that will trigger a reward mechanism in your brain. And you get that with sugar. So if you stop taking sugar, then you are going to feel bad, all right, because your dopamine level goes down. And then on top of that, you will feel hungry more often if you eat a lot of high carb diet along with sugars, because your blood sugar level will go up after you consume a lot of carbohydrates, and then your insulin will go up to try and bring down the blood sugar level. And then as your blood sugar level crashes again, then you will feel hunger. And on top of that, when you are not getting the nutrients that you need, because there are 2 types of food, all right? There are nutrient-dense foods like red meats, steaks, and eggs, and energy-high foods like, say, pasta or chocolates or potato chips, right? You know, these are all processed foods, although pasta is less processed than highly processed foods, which these days have a lot of chemicals in them. And a lot of people are eating highly processed foods, which are very energy dense, but not nutrient dense. So your body is actually not getting the nutrients it needs, even though you're eating a lot of food, all right? So your body is constantly telling you to eat more in order to get the nutrients that you still lack. It's kind of like being malnourished. Like some people, they're getting a high quantity of food, but they're not getting the nutrients. Malnourished is different from being undernourished and starving. So in terms of psychological, food is literally as addictive as smoking, okay? If you're eating the wrong types of foods, which are high carb foods that will get you a lot of insulin responses throughout the day, which is basically processed foods. And to top it off, the game is still stacked against you because food companies, even big pharmaceutical companies, will sponsor research which will skew public knowledge of nutrition. For example, when a few months ago, I went on a carnivore diet for a month before I shifted to a high meat-based ketogenic diet, and I told all my friends on Facebook that I was going to go and eat the carnivore diet, and more than one person came out and told me that I was going to get a heart attack because they felt that all the saturated fat that I was going to eat from the meats was going to give me a heart attack. Nothing of the sort, okay? Meats are very healthy, okay? The reason there is an agenda against meat is because they're healthy, okay? Same with eggs. Because if you switch the population off healthy foods, then they will be nutrient deficient and they'll be eating a lot more processed foods. Plus, if they get sick, then they become a repeat customer of the pharmaceutical industry. Now, if you don't believe me, then you need to watch a documentary on Netflix called You Are What You Eat, a twin experiment, okay? So in this documentary, which is done by Stanford University, by the way, they should be ashamed of themselves. The experiment is a very interesting concept and a great idea, okay? So you get identical twins, one twin eats a vegan diet and one twin eats an omnivore diet with meat, okay? And they try to keep processed foods out of all of the diet so it's healthy. And then because identical twins have the same DNA, then if there's any differences between the twins, then it must be down to the diet. So they designed the study, and I can save you 3 hours out of a 4-hour, 4-episode series, because at the beginning of the first episode, they spent about 10 minutes. So if you want to watch this, then just fast forward to where the scientist brings together 4 sets of twins and then explains the study to them, okay? And then you can skip the next 3 hours. You can skip the rest of episode 1, 2, and 3 because it's just going on about how bad meat is for you and talking about meat replacement brands like Impossible Foods and how you can create new meats from vegetable sources, plant sources, and you don't need to eat meat ever again. All right. So they're trying to design an experiment, and then they immediately have an agenda to try and push the vegan diet. And if you look up the head researchers at both Stanford and Harvard, they're both vegans now. And there's a reason for that. Okay, so go back to the documentary. You can skip episode 2 and 3 and then just go straight to episode 4 where they start discussing the results of the studies for these twin experiments. So one twin eats the vegan diet and one twin eats an omnivore diet with meat, and then they do exercise on top of that to trigger weight loss. And across the board, between all 4 twins, the meat-eating twin either gained muscle while his other twin lost muscle weight, or they both lost muscle, but the twin who was eating the vegan diet lost way more muscle than the meat-eating twin. So across the board, it's quite obvious that the meat-eating diet is way better than the vegan diet because nobody wants to lose muscle when they're losing weight. They're aiming to lose body fat, okay? And then with each twin, they came up for an explanation for why the vegan diet is still positive. One twin was exercising more than the other twin when he was eating the meat diet, and that's why he gained more muscle, or doing weight training, right? And then, the vegan twin was not eating enough calories because it's harder for somebody on the vegan diet to eat enough calories, which by itself isn't negative, okay? But they try to spin it, or they'll cherry pick some of the data and say, oh, the vegan lost more visceral fat than the meat-eating twin. In fact, the results were so significantly different that with the 4th pair of twins, they were black males. The guy who was eating the meat-eating diet literally looked like he was way buffer than his vegan twin counterpart. So why would they try to spin the results and try to make the vegan diet look more positive and try to push the vegan diet? There are several reasons, okay? And it all has to do with actual corporate interests. Okay, first of all, in terms of processed foods, okay, they're mainly made out of plants, okay? Just about all processed foods are made from seed and vegetable oils, soy, wheat, corn-based. A lot of plant material in there. There's like no animal material because it will go off. And then you add a ton of chemicals, and this is the stuff that's messing people up, right? So they add emulsifiers, colorings, flavorings, and the oils itself is just unhealthy for you because they will oxidize in your body and then cause inflammation. That's how people get sick. Okay, it is literally the processed foods and not the natural meats. But the margins on processed foods is way higher, which is why processed food companies will produce research to promote or rather demonize the meats. And then pharmaceutical companies will do the same thing because they want people to be on their drugs. So for example, if you get high cholesterol, then they try to get doctors to prescribe statins to you. Okay, statins is the anti-cholesterol drug. But I can tell you now, after doing a lot of blood work research and doing blood works on myself, every month, you do not have to, and I have perfect cholesterol, by the way, but if you do get high cholesterol, as long as your triglycerides are not high, plus your HbA1c, which is your blood glucose level over 3 months, is not high, then you don't have to worry, and you definitely don't want to take statins, which will give you negative side effects. So, I mean, we're talking about an industry right now, okay? I don't know if you know or not, but in the US, over 100,000 people have died from fentanyl overdoses because they were prescribed opioid painkillers for surgery and stuff like that, and then they get addicted to their painkillers, and then afterwards they resort to getting fentanyl or even heroin to try and because they're hooked on the opioids. So the pharmaceutical companies don't care if they are literally killing people, but and the reason why they can get away with it is because they lobby politicians in Washington at the highest level, okay? And this goes for the all the plant-based grains, the processed food industry as well. They are supported by what is called the USDA, that's the US Department of Agriculture, is a government organization to try and promote grains sales because the farmers in the Midwest need to sell grains, okay? So since 1980, the USDA has promoted a food pyramid where you're expected to eat as much grains as possible because you're going to prop up the farmers. Otherwise, the politicians won't get the farmer vote. So I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here. It literally makes sense at a, from a company perspective and from a political perspective, all right? And to top it off, why you have a big vegan movement now is because globally, a lot of people are worried about global warming. People like Leonardo DiCaprio, who tell people not to, cut down on their carbon footprint. Meanwhile, flying around in a private jet with his new 18-year-old girlfriends every month. So yeah, great example, Leonardo. And then people just being told that eating cows who fart and burp will cause more global warming. Well, then drive less, because I cycle around town on my bicycle and don't ever go on a holiday ever again. Because, taking a jet uses a lot of jet fuel, just like Leonardo. But I'm telling you this, there's going to be a lot of economic growth in India and in Africa, and there's no way you can cut your emissions, which will offset the amount of growth that's going to happen in India and Africa over the next couple of decades. So the planet is screwed over anyway over the next 100 years. There's not much they can do. If you don't believe me, you can Google, oil demand over the next, predicted oil demand over the next 10 years. It's actually going to go up. So do yourself a favor and do not eat a vegan diet. Stay on a high meat-based diet, especially red meats with animal fats and lots of eggs. The cholesterol ain't gonna kill you. The saturated fats is actually healthy for you. And have an awareness that when it comes to nutrition research, there are a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of entities producing research which is not even accurate. Just like the documentary on Netflix, cherry picking data or trying to spin it in a way which is not accurate in order to push their agenda. Okay, just have that awareness. And as for me personally, I'm just gonna go back onto the my weight loss journey. I'm gonna start fasting tomorrow. Now that I've made all the excuses, but I'm glad that I had the excuses, so I can tell you how it was difficult even for me to start losing weight, even though I know all the science and theory behind it, because at the end of the day, psychologically, it is difficult for everyone, okay? But the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, they want to make it even harder for you, okay? So now you know that, but it is in your power not to go and start a vegan diet. Do not do that. 80% of the people who do the vegan diet will get sick after a few years because they're nutrient deficient, and then they have to go back off the diet, all right? I have nothing against a diet. I'm not biased. I started off on the carnivore diet because my friend recommended it to me, and I shifted back to around 85% meat and some plants and fruits because I'm not biased, all right? I'm not have an agenda where I have to definitely eat carnivore diet and definitely have to eat meats. I'm very open-minded, but you have to prove the science to me for it to make sense. And I'm sorry, if you make a documentary where 4 twins eating meat is clearly gaining more muscle or losing less muscle than their vegan counterparts, then you go and spin a whole load of BS about why the vegan diet is still better. At the end of the day, it's just BS, okay? And this is across nutrition science, across the board, that the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry is pumping out. All right, folks, now you understand how the system works. We can all try and work on getting a healthier diet.